Now we're recording. All right.
Now you're recording. Yep, I see the little button that says we're recording. All right, I'll get started then. So welcome everybody. It is nice to meet you via Zoom. I think all of us that are virtual can say thanks to Pastor Pete. We were gonna do this all live, but given the temperatures outside and the snowfall, I think it's just nice to be in your kitchen, your living room, or me in my office / bedroom. But it is nice to be with all of you today. As I said, the presentation is approximately 25 to 30 minutes or so, and then we'll allow time for questions at the end. And also we'll talk a little bit about how to get registered so that you can get your will or trust completed. So let's get started here with the PowerPoint presentation. So top 5 reasons people do not have a will or trust in place. See if you could check any of these boxes. First, you don't see the need for an estate plan. You wonder, I don't plan on dying anytime soon. Number 3 is you don't want to pay for it. Number 2, complexity is the enemy of execution. A lot of times, things that we perceive to be very complex or difficult or challenging, we just kind of put that off. And number 1 is you don't think you have enough assets to even have a will or a trust. Now, this list cracks me up because my oldest daughter is a freshman at the University of Minnesota. And when she was, 2-3 years old,
Tom?
A MOPS meeting at a church. Yeah, go ahead.
All we see is we see your marvelous face, and your the PowerPoint is off in the corner. So
okay.
The PowerPoint is way off in the corner.
That's odd. So you're not seeing the PowerPoint, you're seeing more of just this.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's not good. I want people to be able to see the PowerPoint. If you, so as of right now,
we have it across their whole screen.
Yeah.
The PowerPoint, and you're down along the right-hand column.
That's what I have.
Okay.
So the people on Zoom are seeing the whole PowerPoint, but you at church are just seeing me?
Yes.
Oh, that is a little strange.
This is Donna, and I have a solution. Go up in the upper right corner of your screen. You'll see a little box. You'll see a couple different view screen. One has 9 little boxes. One has up and down. You can pick where you want the people's faces, but then you also at the top, you can go to view options, and I have mine on original size right now, and I can see it all.
Oh, I see it.
That middle button?
Yeah, I see it. So
is that better?
So what should it be?
Let's click on the top right.
You can experiment. View options. 100%.
We don't have to.
No. I have mine in view options. I have mine on zoom ratio 100% original size.
All right, that's what I've got too.
Okay. You can also do on the upper right.
There we go. I got it.
Okay. Nice job.
Right. Thank you, guys. Yeah. So. All
right.
We will edit the video so that it doesn't have all of our weaknesses shown here. So. Yeah.
And if you're really wanting to share something, Pastor, I can re-record something. We can do it at another time too. One that we'll call this our trial run.
Sounds good.
Because hopefully we'll do this again sometime soon.
Yep.
All right, folks. So sorry for the interruption. So I was just talking about the top 5 reasons people do not have a will or trust in place, and telling a story about my wife going to a MOPS meeting with my youngest daughter. Now she's 19 now, so this is 15, 16 years ago. But my wife went to a Mothers of Preschoolers meeting, and at that meeting, if you've ever been to one of those, They get together for a breakfast and time to talk. And then there's usually a guest speaker. Someone comes in. Well, that particular day that my wife went with her friends and brought Abby along, the speaker was an attorney. And that attorney talked about the importance of having a will or trust in place. So unbeknownst to me, I come home from work that day and my wife's sitting at the kitchen table. And the first thing she says after, how's your day, blah, blah, blah. She says, we need to have a will. And I'm like, a will? What do we need a will for? And I'm sure I hit every one of these 5 buttons on here. We don't need an estate plan. You're going to die. I'm not dying anytime soon. Who's going to pay for it? And I went through all of this and she stood her ground because she had heard a good talk, a good, attorney saying, what about guardianship? And so my wife even asked, well, what about Abby? What about guardianship? I'm like, well, she'll go live with my brother. And my wife right away says, well, why not my brother? Because she has a brother too. And so it just opened up this whole conversation. And I'm grateful. My wife stood her ground and said, we're doing this. And, a short time after that, we had our first will put into place. And since then, we've had 2 more kids and some life changes. And so we've updated that will. But a lot of times people make excuses, and they're not bad excuses. But what I do as an estate coach is try to make estate planning easy. Try to make it so that it's not painful and it's educational along the way. So if you do have a will or trust, how old is it? Have you reviewed it in the last 5 years? Does it reflect an understanding of the tax laws, especially the tax laws in your state? Does it have a charitable component within it? We find that a lot of times when people go to an attorney to get their will or trust done, that attorney may do a great job, but most attorneys don't ask the question, do you hope to be charitable with your inheritance? That's just not on their radar screen. And they're trying to protect you and all your assets and kind of keep it together. And so they're not thinking, oh, well, what about charity? And most people who go to church most Sundays and they put the offering in the plate, or they give online giving, and however they go about it, they assume that when they pass away, well, sure, I want to be charitable. But if you haven't thought about it or put things into writing, so to speak, then it doesn't happen. Does it consider your will or trust? Does it consider the positive or negative effects of the distributions to children? And so there are positive effects, obviously, to getting an inheritance, but there can be some quite negative effects, especially when dealing with a lump sum of money. Will there be taxes within the plan? Are there options or opportunities in your estate plan to reduce or eliminate taxes? And oftentimes there are, and those can be overlooked. So question, and this is a hard question. I debated whether or not to put this in the presentation because normally I like to be live and look at people's faces and empathize with them when I ask this difficult question, but it's an honest question. And it's just, how many of you know of someone your age or younger that has passed away? And this isn't a scare tactic, but it's just meant to have us think that it happens. And so that excuse that I used with my wife of, I'm not planning time soon. Well, unfortunately, it does happen at times. So what's similar about these people? I'm going to show you some photos here, some black and white, some in color. Take a look at all these folks here. And what is similar about all of them? Well, first of all, they've all passed away, but they all passed away unexpectedly. It was a surprise. It was an accident. Abraham Lincoln's story, we all know, was assassinated. Others died while skiing, or unexpected people passing away. And what's similar, and this was an article in the Wall Street Journal, what do Prince and Abraham Lincoln have in common? Well, they passed away without having a will in place. And so we know, you've heard the story, and we're all going to pass away. The thing we can be certain of is death. And so just knowing that kind of encourages, I hope, to be responsible and to think ahead. I know there's been still talk of Kobe Bryant in the news. We're coming up on the year anniversary of when he passed in the helicopter accident. And I saw an article a few months ago saying that he didn't have anything in place for his estate. And you can imagine how much money there is with all of the, with his sports and endorsements and such. And so it's death is a certainty and being prepared is a responsibility. All right, so some facts. 65% of families do not have a will or estate plan. And so the assumption is, oh, everybody's got this but me. I'm the only one. I'm the only, one that's slacking on this. No, there's others too that don't have a will or estate plan in place. And then the number goes up if you're younger, 70% of 30 to 40 years of age, 54% of age 60 and above. 7 out of 10 families who do have a will don't like it or even know what's in it. And this is troubling to me. This is why I like the educational component of estate coaching, is to help people understand what is in your will. Not long ago, a large insurance company reached out to Craig, Craig Millendorf is the CEO of SFC Estate Coaching. They reached out to him and asked him if he would come and do a seminar with their employees, just having those employees bring their will, and then Craig going through their will and explaining to them what's in it. Think about that. They have a will already or a trust. They don't know what's in it. And so we want to help with that. 75% of families with minors will leave guardianship to the court. This is the one that surprised me when my wife came home and said, hey, we got to get a will together, is that if you don't write it down and talk to your guardian. The guardian is where the kids would live. The minor's trustee, that's the person who's in charge of the money for the kids. So guardianship, minor's trustee, if you don't let people know, write it in a will or trust, it can go to the courts. Family member will take care of them. It's an assumption, and unfortunately, it can be left up to a judge to decide. You'd like to avoid that as a parent, I'm sure. Only 8% of families that have a will and have given generously during their lifetime have a charitable component in the will. This is the crazy stat to me. Well, they're all just, I don't know about alarming, but informative. But this stat is that 8% of families who have given generously during their lifetime have a component in their will. I talk to pastors and principals and directors of mission advancement all the time. It's not as though people say, well, I don't like my church, so I don't want to give them anything. Or I don't really like this high school I was a part of, so I don't want them to have any of my inheritance. It's just simply because they haven't been asked and they haven't been told the ways in which you can go about doing so. 44% of baby boomers do not have a will, and we know that religious folks are 4 times more likely to give to charity. So without a will, the disadvantages is that it may be quite costly. Without a will or a trust, the court selects your guardians. The court selects the administrator. The court determines special needs. And we say court, that's probate court. And oftentimes there's no provision for charity. And so some thoughts. What makes up your estate? People are always surprised by how much money they have. When we go through an estate inventory, we talk about all of your assets. Most people's assets are in these 3 places. They're in the equity of their home. They're in their life insurance policy, and so the death benefits that you have in your life insurance policy. And then they're in their investments. And for most people, it's in these 3 places that this is where their income, this is where their investments are, this is what makes up their financial estate. And when you add the equity of home, a life insurance death benefit, your 401k, your 403b, any other investments you might have, and you see that number, it's quite curious when I sit across the table from families and they're like, whoa, I didn't know I was worth 700,000, or I didn't know I was worth 1.2 million or 300,000 or whatever the number is. And we always joke, well, it's not in your back pocket, but it is there. It's there in life insurance investments and in the equity of your home. So estate distribution, only 3 places your money can go when you die. It can go to your family and your friends, your family and loved ones. It can go to charity, or it can go to the government. And by going to the government, that's in the form of taxes and such. And so that's really the only 3 places your money can go when you pass away. And without a plan, this is what it can feel like. It can feel like, oh, I'm not giving my family and loved ones enough, really not giving anything or very little to charity, and the government is getting this big cut. And so with proper planning, this can be more the reality. That your family and loved ones, your family and friends are receiving the largest part of your inheritance, with charity receiving some as well, and the government receiving a lesser share. Now, and hear this. We are not about like how to take money away from Uncle Sam or how to screw the government or anything negative like that. The government actually has put incentives and provisions in place for people who are charitable. Because the government, at least with the founding fathers and others, know that when people are giving to charity, and when charity is doing a good job taking care of the needs of society or helping with the needs of society, it's less of a burden on government. And so to know that those incentives are there, that those tax incentives and write-offs are available to people who are charitable. All right, will versus a trust. A lot of people ask, what's the difference? Well, just know up front that both a will and a trust are great legal documents that will help you distribute money when you pass away. Not only distribute money, but also take care of things like power of attorney, guardianship, and so forth. But just to kind of give you a 40,000-foot view, let's start on the will side. A will, you specify your last wishes and appoint someone to carry them out. A will is a public document. That's the biggest difference between a will and a trust. If you look at the trust column, where a trust says it is a private document. And so a will being a public document, a will then most often does go to probate. And because it goes to probate, a judge will often say that your will we have to wait until the calendar year that you passed away comes to a conclusion so that it can figure out all of the tax status and tax documents. And so that will sometimes at death takes a little bit more time for things to happen. Whereas a trust, you avoid probate because a trust is a private document. It has its own tax code and things happen in 2 to 4 months rather than 12 to 24 months. But back on the will side, you transfer your assets to beneficiaries, you name guardians for your kids. It's less expensive on the front end. A will costs anywhere between $600 and $800 to have done. It's less expensive on the front end, but it can be more expensive on the back end because of the length of time in probate. A trust, you avoid probate, you transfer your assets into a trust while you are alive, so they pass to beneficiaries once you're gone. You name guardians, it's a little more expensive on the front end, somewhere in the area, depending on your attorney, of $1,000 to $1,200 to $1,400. But it is less expensive on the back end because you avoid probate. So there is no cost for estate coaching with me, but there will be a cost. And when I meet with you, hopefully, if you sign up, I'll be able to give you some more benefits, disadvantages, advantages between the will or trust. But that's it in a nutshell. So distribution, lump sum or over a period of years. So when you receive an inheritance, are you receiving it in a lump sum all at once or over a period of years? And so when we think about a lump sum of money, you think, well, it really is important to consider what the positive and negative impact of a lump sum of money might be. And it depends a lot on the financial maturity of your children. You know, chances are if you have 3 or more kids, one is really great with money, one is not so good with money. And one may be in the middle somewhere. And you kind of wonder, all right, what is the impact of a lump sum of money going to mean to my kids? 72% of children that receive over $200,000, I need to finish the sentence. 72% of children that receive over $200,000 in an inheritance find themselves in a new car showroom within 3 months of receiving that $200,000 inheritance. That's an interesting statistic. One of the things that parents often ask me or talk to me about during estate coaching is, how do I make sure my kid doesn't spend this money on a car? How do I make sure this that this inheritance I'm giving goes to education or something else other than a new boat or a car or vacation? And that's when you have to think about that lump sum. So sometimes a lump sum can change the name, but Emily was a 30-something who received a gift, an inheritance. Her father passed away, and she received an inheritance of $300,000 when he passed away. Now, a little bit about Emily is she is a massage therapist by trade. And at the time when she received this inheritance from her father in a lump sum, she was $17,000 in credit card debt. And so this $300,000 suddenly comes into her life unexpectedly. And the first thing Emily starts to think about is, well, how do I remember Dad? How do I memorialize my father in some way? And so she starts thinking, she thinks of a Boundary Waters canoe trip that he took her on when she was in high school with her friends. And she goes, that's it, I'm going to buy a boat. Now, do you think Emily bought a $600 canoe? No, she's got $300,000. And so she buys a $50,000 tricked out pontoon boat, puts it on a big lake up here in northern Wisconsin, and rides that boat around with her friends and family all summer long. At the end of the summer, fall comes, and she hasn't thought about like having a trailer or where to store it, anything. She just wanted to buy a boat. Well, she doesn't have anything to pull this boat, but her husband is in the trades. And he's like, well, I could use a new truck. And so does he buy a $13,000, $20,000 used pickup truck? No, they have money. So he buys a $50,000 pickup truck to pull their $50,000 boat. Now, a few months later, as it gets into the winter months, Emily, a massage therapist, starts thinking, well, I'm tired of paying rent. I want to be the person where I have a building, I have my own building, and people pay me rent to rent out space like I'm paying out rent to rent out space to have my business. Well, Emily, unfortunately, what's the number one rule of buying any piece of property is location, location, location. A building for $125,000. She puts about $50,000 into renovations of that building. And a first couple of contracts with people who are renting space don't go over so well. And it costs her about $25,000 to $30,000 in failed partnerships. And I'll stop there. Now, if you've been doing the mental math, as I've told this story, you notice that she's just about out of money. And the unfortunate piece of Emily's story is that within 14 months, she had spent that entire $300,000 that she received in an inheritance, and to this day still has $17,000 in credit card debt. And so those stories happen. They're actually more common than you think. Financial psychologists say that 7 in 10 people that receive an unexpected lump sum of money, whether it's through a bonus at work, through winning like a lottery. How many of you watch those shows where people blow all the lottery, and it's like amazing. They have millions of dollars and all of a sudden it's gone. So whether it's something at work, a lottery, or an inheritance, we'll lose it within a few years. And so we want to be careful that that doesn't happen to your loved ones. So over a period of years, at manageable amounts over time is what's best. It protects the assets for a long period of time. It can be used for a variety of costs like school, your mortgage, a college education, vacation time with family. And so there's a lot of benefits to it being spread out over time. So the purpose of an inheritance, we often ask, what is the purpose of an inheritance? It's a safety net, right? It's a safety net in case of an emergency, not a hammock, right? Not a hammock, a safety net and not a hammock. I love Warren Buffett has a quote like, give your kids enough money so that they can do anything, but don't give them so much that they don't have to do anything. I think that's a good quote to live by when you think of this stuff. So how much did I receive in my inheritance? And if this is more, do the children really need it? Now, this can be a tough question, and I've asked this question before. Just recently, I sat down with a couple, and they had an $800,000 estate inventory, giving their house, their investments, their life insurance, and they had 2 kids. And I said, well, so if you both pass away, each of your kids will receive $400,000. Do they need it? And they said, oh, no, they're doing great. They have fantastic jobs and their families. And I said, all right, well, then what are some options if they don't need it? And so that's just a question that we might ask, think about. How are my kids doing? Are they responsible? Are they good stewards? Do they make wise financial decisions? And is this being a good steward of your money? Are others in need of it more? Some estate options. You have what's called a will with a trust for minors, and then what's called a give it twice plan, which I'm going to talk to you about in just a second. So a simple will might look like this, where you have your estate, a small amount or a portion goes to charity, which helps you save on income tax, might reduce your estate tax. And then the larger portion goes to benefit children, nieces, nephews, trusted friends, whomever you would want that to go. Now give it twice. Let me just get all the buttons in here. This is a charitable option for you. And I know that there's a lot on the screen, but if you just start with the property. So let's imagine that with your home, your investments, and your life insurance policy, you decide that you're going to take advantage of what's called a CRUT. CRUT doesn't sound that exciting, but what that stands for is a charitable remainder unit trust, a charitable remainder unit trust. So you decide at death, you're going to give $250,000 to your loved ones. Let's say you're going to give that to your kids, and they're going to receive that in a lump sum at death. So you divide that by however many kids you have, and that's how much they get, $250,000 right away. Then you decide to take $500,000 of your estate and put it into a CRUT, into a charitable remainder unit trust. Here's what happens, is that $500,000 in the charitable remainder unit trust pretty much stays in the trust for 20 years. And over the span of 20 years, your family and loved ones will receive a check once a year for 20 years. And by the time the 20 years is done, your family members will have received the $1,000. So let's say you've got 5 kids, you put $500,000 into a unit trust. At the end of 20 years, each one of your 5 kids will have received $100,000. So a check once a year would have came once a year, dividing 100,000 by 20, do the math. All right. The cool thing is, in a charitable remainder unit trust, is your family members received their portion of the estate. They received that from the interest on the principal. And so over 20 years, that $500,000 stayed there in the trust. And at the end of 20 years is still there. And so long as the remainder, the principal at the end of 20 years goes to charity, it goes to charity tax-free. So you were able to take $500,000, give it all to your kids, not in a lump sum all at once, but over a span of 20 years. And at the end of 20 years, give away an additional $500,000 to charity. These are those sorts of devices or vehicles, they call them sometimes, that people just don't know about. I wasn't aware of this before I became an estate coach, but now I see the benefit of giving my kids money over years, over 20 years, as opposed to all at once, and then being able to be more charitable than I ever thought possible. So those are some of the things that I find exciting about estate coaching and about what people can do with their inheritance. All right. This one, Secure Act. Some people ask about what was called the stretch IRA distribution. And so if you're not aware of it, don't worry about it because it doesn't exist anymore. But the stretch IRA was something that was very common, very popular years ago. And people wondered, well, the government got rid of the stretch IRA. So people wondered, well, what are we going to do now? And this last little bit says the IRA to testamentary unit trust, which is the CRUT, includes all the benefits of a stretch IRA. And this person, predicted that during 2020 and beyond, there'll be a boom in CRUTs. And we've seen that to be the case. As people become more and more aware of a charitable remainder unit trust, people are choosing that option with their estate. So let's take a deep breath. So you've heard all this and you decide, well, this is good. I want to get my will done. It's been on my to-do list. It's been on my New Year's resolution list for the last 5 years or longer. Or I have a will now, but it's outdated. And when we first did our will, we had young kids and now they're all out of the house. So we need to update it. Wherever you're at in the process, if you're saying, well, this is good, I'd like to go through this estate coaching. What you would do is you would sign up, and I'll talk about that at the end. It's pretty simple to sign up. But you would sign up for meeting with me, and you would meet with me twice. And meeting number 1 would be what's called a data gathering. And we'd meet for about an hour, and I'd collect as much information. I have a program that I use to collect all that information that's secure and confidential. But I collect as much information about you as I can. about your family, your professional advisors. We would talk power of attorney, guardianship, minors trust, testamentary gift planning is how you want to divvy up the money when you pass away. We'd collect an estate inventory, and we'd start to have a conversation about any charitable desires or goals that you might have. At the end of our first meeting, you're going to have some homework to do. You're going to get an email with a to-do list with some homework to do. And we would say, I'd say, so given the homework that you have to do, what do you think is a reasonable amount of time to get this information to me? And most people say 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks, I got to talk to my kids. I got to talk to my brother about being my POA. So in 2 to 3 weeks, you email me whatever's missing. I take that missing information, put it into the program, get everything collected and ready, so that when we meet the second time, then we have a booklet to present to you. It's a digital booklet. I can also give you a hard copy if you prefer. And then at that second meeting, which is closer to a half hour, we go through, we make sure that everything is correct. You understand everything that's in your future estate plan. We talk about those charitable options, and then we discuss, do you have an attorney in mind? 9 out of I have no idea who to use as an attorney. And that's where SFC Estate Coaching and St. Paul's have worked together to come up with a list of attorneys for your consideration. So those are people that are connected to the church or people that I've worked with at SFC that we know that'll do a nice job, that will take care of you, that are charity and nonprofit, minded folks. And so then with your permission at that time, I can send that attorney an email introduction with you and your information. That attorney will reach out to you. You'll meet with that attorney probably twice, most are twice. You meet once to go through everything, the second time to sign all the documents. And this whole process on this slide, from meeting with me for the first time, no matter where you're at in understanding of will or trust, if you have one before, you're doing this for the first time, from that point at meeting number 1 to signing with the attorney, 2 to 3 months. 2 to 3 months. So it doesn't have to be something that drags out for an entire year or 2 years or stays on that to-do list or your New Year's resolution for another year. So that's the process. And these are the benefits to you if you sign up, is that you're coached. So I'm your coach, and I'll coach you through the completion of a personal plan. I feel like sometimes I tell people I'm a personal trainer for helping people get their will and trust done. And some people just need a little nudge or an email reminder, and some people need emails every week until I get all the information. I'll coach you through it, whatever it takes. It's free. There's no ulterior motive. I have nothing else to sell or buy. I'm not gonna, get through an hour presentation with you and then try to sell you life insurance or a cemetery plot or anything like that. It's confidential. We take that very seriously. We know how important confidentiality is to folks. And so the software that we use is the same software that hospitals use to make sure that things stay confidential. And I actually don't really collect any I don't collect like driver's license numbers, social security numbers, policy numbers, anything like that, unless you decide to go with something like a charitable remainder unit trust. Then we would talk by phone or meet in person. But most of what I collect is not things that you're that concerned about. However, I just want you to know it's confidential. No pressure tactics, given by choice. There's no judgment in the decisions you make. I'm just here to help you make the choices you want to make. Process works regardless of age, income, or estate value. A lot of people, when I tell them I'm an estate coach, they say, what do you work with old people? And I say, well, sometimes, but a lot of the people that I work with are in their 20s or 30s. They're starting with a young family, or they're starting careers, and they're just wanting to make sure things are set. Most people, actually, statistically, most people do their first will. This is kind of funny. They do their first will when they go on their first vacation, leaving their firstborn with a relative for the first time. And so they're like, oh my gosh, we're going away. We're leaving our kid with so-and-so. We've got to have something in place. And so they create that first will, which is a good thing. But then, 20 years later and 4 kids later and all these changes later, and they haven't updated it. It's a need for an update. And then the last 2 bullets on there is that you're educated on a will, trust, and estate plans. As I've tried to do a little bit in this presentation, you'll get a whole lot more of that. And then there's the potential to give beyond what you thought or imagined, what we think or imagine. So there's some good benefits there. And so SFC Estate Coaching, last slide, we're complementary. We work with advisors, not in place of them. I'm a professional estate coach, but I'm not a professional attorney. I'm not a financial planner. And so I can help you and give you suggestions, but if you get into some really specific questions about specific things, I might just say, you know what, that's a great question. You should really reach out to your accountant, your financial planner, but I'll help you as much as I can. It's confidential. All information is kept discreetly between the family and myself. It's educational. Families will be competent and educated when finished. This is huge. There's so many times when I meet with folks for the first time and they're kind of doing this. They got their arms shrugged. They're like, that complexity is the enemy of execution kind of look. And by the time we're done, people are sitting up straight. They're feeling more confident because now they understand the difference between a power of attorney and a trustee. They know where their kids are going to go if something were to happen. It's a good feeling to be in the know, to be educated. And then attorney ready. Communicate with your attorney your desires to make sure your will or trust is completed to your satisfaction. So that is it for the presentation part, or the PowerPoint part. How did I do? I think I kept it under a half hour, but I thank you for listening. Let me talk just a little bit about getting signed up. And
recording.
Yeah, you want to pause the recording?
Yeah. Or why don't you talk about how to sign up first, and then I'll stop the recording.
Sure. The easiest way to sign up is to go to the church website. There's a page there about ways to give. I think it's what the thing is at the top. Pastor, you might know better than I. But click on that. It'll have a drop down. Talk a little bit about estate coaching, estate planning, and then there's a link there, and it takes you to a calendar called VisiBook. VisiBook is just a simple way for us to put in dates. And so you click on VisiBook, they'll ask for two things: email and a phone number. That's it, email and a phone number. And then you'll see a list of dates. I pretty much, starting next week, depending on the week, you have like a Tuesday one week, and then a Thursday the next week, and then a Monday the next week. So for the next 6 or 7 weeks, there's opportunities in the evening to sign up on a time slot. And so you get signed up. When you sign up, I'll get a notice. I actually looked this morning and saw that someone had signed up already. I didn't realize that it had gone live. So if someone had signed up already, and then you'll get email confirmation from me, you'll get a Zoom invitation, a document to review. I'll make it as simple as possible. And then we'll meet via Zoom like this. So that's the easiest way to sign up. If you look at all those days and you're like, none of these work for us, I always say, just email or call me. I'll make it work. I've met with people on Friday nights at 9 o'clock because that just happens to be the time when the husband and wife are both home. I've done Saturday mornings, Sunday afternoons. I met with someone the day after Christmas because that just worked for them. So whatever, if you don't like the options or none of the options work for you, just shoot me an email or call me, and we'll find something that works.
Thank you, Tom. So in our
all right, Pastor, you're still recording?
I'm still recording. I say that when you're on our website, there's the give button, and you hover over that, and there's the estate planning page, and you click on the estate planning, and there's a VisiBook sign up on that page. But I will send you all a link again as well. So I'll send out that link regularly. So I'll stop recording, and then we'll just have some conversation.
Yeah,